ARod won't give up his pursuit to try and own the Mets. I mean, it's over. I mean, as we mentioned before, I mean, what's done is done. You might feel like you got screwed over here a little bit if you're Alex Rodriguez and you feel like at the end, guys and every party didn't play fairly. And I can understand that.
The irony of ARod being upset with someone else for cheating is too much to endure.
No, I get it. But the point being is if you're Alex, the ship has sailed. I mean, horse is out of the barn. Whatever cliche you want to throw out there, I mean, it's all true. Cohen by November 18th, because the vote by all owners, I think, is expected to take place November the 17th. So by November 18th, I mean, Steve Cohen's going to be in, and he's going to be owning this Met team. By the way, here's the other thing. I mean, you talk about pushback, right? Number one. Ken, how about the leadership of Rob Manfred here? You're the commissioner of baseball. You've already come out and talked about the very fact of how good you think Cohen would be, for this market, for New York, owning the Met team in the future. Obviously being thankful to the Wilpons and Saul Katz and the like in the initial statement after this deal for the second time came to fruition. If you're Major League Baseball, I mean, Rob, get a little leadership here. You've got to basically Nightingale doing the writing stories on the USA Today at the behest of Reinsdorf and Alex Rodriguez, which we find out obviously they're very, very misleading in nature when you look at the story on the whole. If you're Major League Baseball, that's the last thing you want. Number one, Met fans would riot. I mean, would absolutely riot if Steve Cohen is not the owner of this team. They really would. Met fans can't wait. They've got a guy stepping in that's a longtime Met fan. That's, as we've seen reports, is going to be, as we talked about it yesterday, is going to be aggressive early in free agency. Clappish basically told us that. That's going to highly invest in analytics and everything like that, that he is going to fully invest in this team worth $14 billion. How do you think Met fans would react if all of a sudden this hit a little bit of an issue or had an issue late and Cohen doesn't get approved at Met owner? I mean, there would be an absolute riot. Met fans, you couldn't contain their anger. They'd be so ticked off.
Absolutely, and they would have to direct their ire at Jerry Reinsdorf. And can I just speak for everybody outside of Chicago, or maybe even people in Chicago? Have we had enough of Jerry Reinsdorf in the year 2020? I mean, I sit there through 10 parts of a documentary to have him explain away why he broke up one of the greatest dynasties in sports because he didn't want to pay Scottie Pippen, and then blamed it on everybody, right, but himself. Meanwhile, Michael Jordan is out there just throwing flames on this guy left and right. And I've had enough of Jerry Reinsdorf then. Jerry Reinsdorf is also, listen, great, he's 84. You're talking about the future of an organization, and Jerry Reinsdorf at 84, who's been doing this for 4 decades, is going to stand in the way? Come on, man. And A-Rod's just got to move out. You got to move out. It's over. You lost.
Clear the path. Get the hell out of the way, Alex.
And I was someone who thought, hey, he could run a baseball team, but you're not going to get the opportunity when it comes to New York
telling A-Rod to get out of the way. It's time to get out of the way.
Listen, I was the last one that I could even remotely see how the Mets could win with Alex Rodriguez at the helm. And even I'm just totally ticked off at this story because it's nonsense. It's nonsense.
Because you're talking about something where you read something and you're taking somebody at its word that ends up being true. And then then you find out that it's very, very misleading in nature. And you've got this old curmudgeon in Reinsdorf out there in Chicago. And you've got Alex Rodriguez going out there and playing the master puppeteer. What are we doing here? If you're Major League Baseball, what are we doing? We're trying to, you got the World Series going on. Steve Cohen wants to step in here and revolutionize the Mets and bring them up to 2020. And you're going to have Jerry Reinsdorf trying to rally owners to vote down Steve Cohen as owner in order to get Alex Rodriguez and Jennifer Lopez in? Are we serious here?
Well, you mentioned Rob Manfred, right? And nobody's crying any tears for Manfred because he's probably one of the most unpopular people in all of sports right now.
Oh, the leadership's is a joke.
Right. Okay. But think about this from Manfred's point of view. He probably can't wait for Cohen to come in. You want to know why? Think about the last, besides statements and stuff like that about Cohen buying the team or what have you, think about the last interaction between Manfred and the Wilpons having to be competing statements about Brody getting caught on a hot mic about whether or not whose idea was it and how horrible was the idea for the Mets to come on to the field, make a statement about Jacob Blake and the Black Lives Matter movement, walk off the field, then come back an hour later. how ridiculous that was in the first place, and the fact that Brody got caught on the mic questioning Rob's leadership. Turns out it was Jeff's idea, and then they had to backtrack this whole thing in one of the more bizarre days in Mets history, which is saying something. And that's your last foray here with the Wilpons. And now you got ARod, someone who Rob Manfred and ARod were like mortal enemies against one another.
Got dirty in the investigation, paying guys off left and right.
ARod fought that suspension. He said he was fighting for his life, is what he said to Francesa, whatever he said that day, all that BS.
He also said I never did PEDs, which was a lie.
We can count the lie.
Said a lot of different things.
So now you got ARod trying to go backdoor here, trying to just muddy the waters with Jerry Reinsdorf doing the bidding, allegedly leaking stuff to a reporter. 'Cause the question I had yesterday about the Lee story was this: how did we not know about this before? If this had been a significant obstacle in that Cohen would not be able to take over, how could that now, the deal's at the 1 yard line? How could this possibly just be coming to light right now? And it's because they're trying to do some dirty tricks type thing to muddy the waters. Manfred has to be going out of his mind. ARod, take a seat, please. Reinsdorf, take a seat, please. And Wilpons, take a seat, please. I bet there's nobody more excited for Cohen than Rob Manfred.
Well, I don't think the Wilpons are playing any role with this. I think
I'm saying the last embarrassing thing with the idea about taking the field and stuff.
Yes, I get it. I get it with that, but I think right now, listen, it's over. It's like a breakup. It's not you, it's me. It's Alex. It's done. I'm sorry. She no longer wants your affection. It's over. I mean, someone's got to write her number. Someone needs to write ARod a letter.
Next step is a restraining order.
Someone needs to write Alex Rodriguez a Dear John letter and tell him that it's the pursuit of the Mets is done. That you were not wanted. You made a nice effort. I appreciate the roses. I appreciate the flowers. I appreciate all that, the nurturing, the affection, but it's done. Steve Cohen is owning this team. It becomes enough. I mean, how many things do you have to overcome here? Number one is, the initial deal falls apart because, amazingly enough, when they go through the initial negotiations, Steve Cohen agrees to Jeff Wilpon basically running the team for 5 years and spending his money, even though he is sending the Wilpons and Saul Katz $2.6 billion.
Yeah,
that made little to no sense when you look at it. Then all of a sudden he had to come to Jesus light of day moment and say, what am I doing here? This deal makes no sense. And then all of a sudden you get the MLB scribe saying, well, Cohen will never own an MLB team again. Rob Manfred and Major League Baseball are ticked off. And then obviously the cooler heads prevail. That dies down. Cohen goes through this blind bid process. He ends up being the apple of the eye of Saul Katz because why? Amazingly enough, he's got the most money, right? And he's fluid, and he's cash, and he can basically write a check. He can carry over briefcases of money and hand it over to Saul Katz and Jeff Wilpon and Fred Wilpon. And, it's all liquid when you look at Steve Cohen. He's worth over $14 billion, so he ends up winning the bid, and then you're getting this nonsense where ARod said the Cohens didn't play fair or the Wilpons didn't play fair, that Jeff Wilpon, obviously, amazingly enough, the apple of the eye was Alex Rodriguez for Jeff Wilpon. Why? Because we find out later that Jeff Wilpon would have had the Sandy Alderson role if Alex Rodriguez had won the bid for the Mets. So, around and around we go. Here's where we need to come to an understanding here. It's done. It's done. Enough with the nonsense. I don't need to read another Nightingale story. I don't need to hear from the curmudgeon Reinsdorf in Chicago, nor do I need to hear from Alex Rodriguez, dyed hair and all. I don't need to hear from any of them. Enough's enough. Steve Cohen is owning this team. Get out of the way. Just clear the way. Let him own the team. Get me to November 18th when it's official.